Most people don't ignore you because you're weak, they ignore you because you're predictable. The truth is, respect isn't given to the nicest person in the room, it's given to the person who controls the frame without asking for permission. You've been told to be kind, to be patient, to wait your turn, but none of that earns real influence. What changes everything is when your behavior signals certainty, boundaries, and quiet authority. The moment you shift how you act, not what you say, people start recalibrating how they see you. And today, I'm going to show you the four behaviors that flip that switch instantly. Control the frame, don't react to it. Most people walk into conversations and unconsciously accept whatever emotional tone, power dynamic, or expectation is already there. They mirror the other person's energy, they adjust their posture, their voice, even their opinions just to fit in. That's reacting to the frame. And the moment you do that, you've already handed over control. The person who sets the frame decides what matters, what's normal, what's acceptable, and what isn't. If someone speaks aggressively and you become defensive, you've accepted their frame. If someone dismisses you and you rush to prove yourself, you've accepted their frame. If someone tries to rush you and you speed up, you've accepted their frame. Controlling the frame starts with awareness. You have to recognize when someone is trying to pull you into their reality. It could be subtle, a tone of impatience, a sarcastic comment, a dismissive glance. Most people respond instantly without thinking, but the moment you pause, even for a second, you create space. That space is where control lives. Instead of reacting, you choose how the interaction will go. Your tone stays steady, your body language stays grounded, your words are measured. You don't match their chaos, you replace it with clarity. When you control the frame, you define the pace. If someone tries to rush you, you slow down. You speak calmly, you take your time, you show through your behavior that you are not affected by pressure. This sends a powerful signal that you operate on your own terms. People start adjusting to you instead of the other way around. They lower their voice, they become more precise, they pay more attention, not because you demanded it, but because your behavior made it clear what standard you operate at. Control also means deciding what gets your attention and what doesn't. Not every comment deserves a response. Not every challenge deserves engagement. When someone throws negativity or tries to provoke you, reacting emotionally gives them control. Staying neutral removes their leverage. You're not ignoring them out of weakness. You're choosing not to reward behavior that doesn't meet your standard. That quiet refusal to engage is often more powerful than any argument. It forces the other person to either raise their level or lose influence in the interaction. Your body language plays a huge role in this. Eye contact that is steady but not aggressive, posture that is relaxed but upright, movements that are slow and intentional. These signals communicate that you are grounded and not easily shaken. People pick up on this instantly, often without realizing it. They feel the difference. Someone who reacts is easy to read and easy to influence. Someone who controls the frame is harder to move, harder to pressure, and naturally commands more respect. There's also a discipline in not over-explaining yourself. When you control the frame, you don't feel the need to justify every decision or fill every silence. Silence can be a tool. It creates weight behind your words. It shifts attention back to the other person. Instead of you chasing approval, they start seeking your response. That subtle shift changes the entire dynamic. Controlling the frame is not about dominating or overpowering others. It's about maintaining your internal state regardless of what's happening around you. It's about being consistent in how you show up, even when others try to disrupt that consistency. When you stop reacting and start choosing your responses, you become the reference point in the interaction. People begin to take cues from you, align with your pace, and respect your presence without you ever asking for it. Set boundaries without explaining yourself. Most people struggle with this because they've been conditioned to believe that saying no requires justification. They feel the need to soften it, to add reasons, to make sure the other person understands and approves. But every extra explanation weakens the boundary. It opens the door for negotiation, for pushback, for someone to find a way around what you just said. The more you explain, the more it sounds like you're asking for permission instead of making a decision. A boundary is not a debate. It's a statement of what you will and will not accept. When you say no and immediately start explaining, you shift the power dynamic. You're no longer in control of your choice. You're trying to convince someone else to agree with it. And the moment they disagree, you feel pressure to adjust. That's how boundaries get erased. People sense hesitation, and they push exactly where they feel that gap. Setting a boundary without explanation requires clarity first. You need to know what matters to you, what your limits are, and where you draw the line. Without that clarity, you'll hesitate. You'll second guess yourself in the moment, and that hesitation will show in your tone, your body language, your words. But when you're clear, your response becomes simple and direct. I'm not available for that. That doesn't work for me. I'm not interested. No extra details, no long stories, no apologies layered on top of it. The discomfort you feel when you don't explain is normal. It comes from breaking a pattern. You're used to managing other people's reactions, making sure they're comfortable, avoiding conflict. But respect doesn't come from making everyone comfortable. It comes from being consistent. When people see that your boundaries don't shift based on pressure, they stop testing them. Not immediately, but over time. Consistency teaches people how to treat you. Tone matters more than the words themselves. A boundary delivered with uncertainty invites challenge. A boundary delivered with calm certainty closes the door. You don't need to be aggressive. You don't need to raise your voice. You don't need to dominate the conversation. In fact, the quieter and more composed you are, the stronger the message becomes. It signals that this is not emotional, it's simply how you operate. Silence is part of this process. After you set a boundary, there will often be a pause. The other person might question you, push back, or wait for you to add more. Most people rush to fill that silence with more explanation because it feels uncomfortable. But holding that silence reinforces your position. It shows that you're not looking for approval. It puts the responsibility back on the other person to respond within the limits you've set. There will be moments when people react negatively. They might label you as difficult, cold, or uncooperative. That's not a sign that your boundary is wrong. It's a sign that they benefited from you not having one before. When you stop over-explaining, you remove their ability to negotiate your limits, and some people won't like that. But the people who respect you will adjust without needing a detailed explanation. They'll recognize the clarity and respond to it. Your body language supports everything. Maintain eye contact, keep your posture relaxed, don't fidget or look away as if you're unsure. Small physical cues can either reinforce your boundary or weaken it. If your words say no but your body language asks for approval, people will respond to the hesitation, not the statement. Alignment between what you say and how you present it is what makes the boundary feel real to others. Over time, setting boundaries without explanation changes how you see yourself. You stop feeling the need to justify your choices. You become more decisive, more grounded, more aware of your own standards. And that internal shift is what people pick up on. They don't just hear the words, they feel the certainty behind them. That certainty is what makes your boundaries hold even when they're tested. Speak less, but make every word deliberate. Most people think influence comes from saying more, explaining more, filling every gap in conversation so there's no silence left. They talk to prove intelligence, to gain approval, to make sure they're understood. But the more you speak without intention, the less weight your words carry. When everything is said, nothing stands out. People stop listening, not because they don't care, but because there's no signal in the noise. Deliberate speech starts with restraint. You don't respond immediately to everything. You don't interrupt just to add your point. You let others speak fully, and you observe. That pause before you respond is not hesitation, it's control. It shows that you're processing, not reacting. And when you finally speak, it feels measured. People naturally lean in because your words are not automatic, they are chosen. Most conversations are filled with unnecessary words, filler phrases, repeated ideas, over-explanations. Removing those creates clarity. Instead of long sentences that try to cover every angle, you use simple, direct statements. You say exactly what needs to be said, nothing more. This doesn't make you cold or distant, it makes you precise. Precision builds authority because it signals that you know exactly what you mean. Silence becomes a tool instead of something to avoid. When you're comfortable with silence, you stop rushing to fill it. You allow moments to breathe. This shifts pressure onto the other person. They start to reveal more, to clarify their thoughts, to engage deeper just to fill the space. Meanwhile, you stay composed, choosing carefully when to step in. Silence adds weight to your presence because it shows that you don't need constant validation through speech. Deliberate speaking also means thinking about impact before delivery. You consider not just what you're saying, but how it will land. Tone, pacing, and emphasis all shape how your message is received. A calm, steady tone carries more authority than a rushed or overly emotional one. Slowing down your speech forces people to pay attention. It signals confidence because there's no urgency in your delivery. You're not trying to convince, you're stating. Another key element is removing the need to win every conversation. People who talk too much often do it to dominate or to prove a point. But influence doesn't come from overpowering others with words. It comes from guiding the interaction. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can say is a short observation or a well-placed question. A single sentence delivered at the right moment can shift the entire direction of a conversation more effectively than a long explanation. When you speak less, people begin to assign more value to what you do say. Your words become signals rather than background noise. Others start to listen more closely, not because you demanded attention, but because your pattern changed. You're no longer predictable. You don't speak just to fill space. You speak with purpose. That unpredictability creates curiosity, and curiosity pulls attention. Body language reinforces this. When you're not over-talking, your presence becomes more noticeable. Eye contact, small gestures, posture, all of it becomes part of the communication. You don't need excessive movement or exaggerated expressions. Stillness itself becomes powerful. It shows that you're grounded, that you're not trying to compensate with noise. There's also discipline in resisting the urge to explain everything. Not every thought needs to be shared. Not every detail needs to be clarified. Trust that what you've said is enough. Over-explaining often comes from insecurity, from the fear that you won't be understood or accepted. But when you trust your words, you let them stand on their own. As you practice this, you'll notice a shift in how people respond. Conversations become more intentional. Interruptions decrease. People give you more space to speak. And when you do, they listen differently. It's not about being silent, it's about being selective. Every word you choose carries intention, and that intention is what gives it power. Stay emotionally neutral under pressure. Most people don't lose control in calm situations. They lose it the moment pressure shows up. A raised voice, a tight deadline, a challenge to their authority, a moment of uncertainty. These are the triggers that expose emotional reactions. And once emotion takes over, clarity disappears. Decisions become reactive, words become impulsive, and control shifts to whoever created the pressure in the first place. Emotional neutrality is not about suppressing feelings or pretending they don't exist. It's about not letting those feelings dictate your behavior in real time. There's a difference between feeling something and acting on it immediately. Most people collapse that gap. They feel frustration and instantly express it. They feel anxiety and rush their decisions. They feel challenged and become defensive. That instant reaction is what gives others leverage. The key is creating space between stimulus and response. When pressure hits, your first instinct might be to react. Instead, you pause. Even a brief pause disrupts the automatic pattern. It allows you to observe what's happening instead of being pulled into it. You notice your own emotional response without letting it control your actions. That awareness alone changes the dynamic. You're no longer predictable. Your breathing becomes a tool here. Under pressure, most people unconsciously speed up their breathing, which increases tension and narrows focus. Slowing your breath even slightly signals your body to stay calm. It keeps your voice steady, your movements controlled, your thinking clear. This is not visible as a technique to others, but they feel the effect. While they escalate, you remain stable. That contrast shifts the balance of control. Tone is critical. When emotions rise, voices tend to get louder, faster, sharper. Maintaining a calm, even tone does more than just keep you composed. It influences the other person. People naturally adjust to the emotional level of the interaction. If you refuse to match their intensity, it forces a shift. Either they calm down to meet you, or they stand out as unstable. In both cases, your position becomes stronger without needing to assert it directly. Neutrality also means not taking things personally in the moment. Pressure often comes with criticism, disagreement, or attempts to provoke. If you interpret everything as a personal attack, you'll react defensively. But when you separate the situation from your identity, you gain control. You can evaluate what's being said objectively, respond to the content instead of the emotion, and avoid unnecessary escalation. There's also power in slowing down your responses. When someone pressures you for an immediate answer, taking a moment before responding shows that you are not controlled by urgency. You consider, you choose your words, you maintain your pace. This signals confidence and stability. People who rush under pressure appear uncertain. People who stay steady appear in control. Your body language reinforces emotional neutrality. Minimal fidgeting, relaxed posture, steady eye contact. No sudden movements, no visible agitation. Even small cues like tightening your jaw or shifting your weight can signal discomfort. When those are absent, your presence feels grounded. Others sense that you are not easily shaken, which changes how they approach you. Neutrality doesn't mean you never express emotion. It means you choose when and how to express it. There's a difference between controlled expression and uncontrolled reaction. When you decide to show emotion, it's intentional, measured, and aligned with your objective. That makes it far more effective than reacting impulsively in the heat of the moment. As you practice staying neutral under pressure, you begin to notice patterns. Situations that once triggered immediate reactions start to feel manageable. You gain confidence not from avoiding pressure, but from handling it without losing control. People begin to trust your stability because they see that you don't shift with every change in environment. That stability becomes part of your identity in their perception, shaping how they interact with you and how much influence you carry in any situation. Walk away from disrespect instantly. Most people tolerate far more than they should, not because they agree with it, but because they don't want to create tension. They laugh off comments that cross the line. They stay in conversations that undermine them. They continue engaging even when the tone shifts into something dismissive. In that moment, they're trying to preserve harmony. But what they're actually doing is teaching others that their boundaries are flexible. Disrespect grows in the space where it's allowed to exist without consequence. Walking away is not about dramatic exits or making a scene. It's about recognizing when an interaction no longer meets your standard and choosing not to participate in it. That decision alone sends a clear message. You're not negotiating your self-respect, and you're not staying to convince someone to treat you better. The moment you start arguing with disrespect, you've already accepted being part of it. You're engaging on terms that lower your position. The difficulty comes from the instinct to respond. When someone disrespects you, there's a natural urge to defend yourself, to correct them, to prove them wrong. But that reaction keeps you in the interaction. It gives the other person exactly what they wanted: your attention, your energy, your time. Walking away removes all of that instantly. It cuts off the reward. And without reward, the behavior loses its power. This doesn't always mean physically leaving the room, although sometimes it does. It can be as simple as ending the conversation, shifting your focus, or disengaging without explanation. You don't need a long speech to justify why you're leaving. In fact, explaining too much weakens the action. The strength is in the decision itself, not in how well you can defend it. A simple, calm withdrawal is enough. Timing matters. The longer you stay after the moment of disrespect, the more you normalize it. Delayed reactions often come across as uncertainty. Immediate disengagement, on the other hand, creates a clear association. The behavior happened and the interaction ended. Over time, people begin to understand that crossing certain lines leads to instant loss of access to you. That's a powerful form of conditioning. Your emotional state plays a role here as well. Walking away should not come from anger or impulsiveness. If it does, it can look reactive rather than controlled. The goal is to remain composed. To make the decision without visible frustration. When you leave calmly, it communicates that the standard is internal, not emotional. You're not upset, you're simply not available for that level of interaction. There will be situations where people test this repeatedly. They may try to pull you back in, to provoke a reaction, to see if your boundary holds. Consistency is what makes it effective. If you walk away once but engage the next time, the signal becomes unclear. But when the response is the same every time, the pattern becomes undeniable. People either adjust their behavior or they lose the opportunity to engage with you. Walking away also requires letting go of the need to have the last word. Many people stay in disrespectful situations because they want to finish the argument, to deliver one final point, to feel like they've won. But that need keeps them trapped. The real control is in choosing not to continue at all. You don't need to win the exchange when you can exit it entirely. Your body language during this moment is just as important as the action itself. No sudden movements, no aggressive gestures, no visible tension. A calm shift, a steady posture, a simple disengagement. These subtle cues reinforce that your decision is deliberate. It's not an emotional reaction, it's a standard being applied. As this becomes part of how you operate, people begin to recognize that access to you is conditional on respect, not because you demanded it, but because your actions consistently reinforced it. You don't need to announce your standards when your behavior makes them clear. The absence of your presence becomes the consequence, and that absence carries more weight than any argument could reward behavior you want. Ignore what you don't. Most people focus all their attention on what frustrates them. They react to negativity, they correct what they don't like, they give energy to the exact behaviors they wish would stop. Without realizing it, they reinforce those patterns. Attention is a form of reward, and whatever you consistently respond to tends to repeat. If someone interrupts you and you engage every time, you're training them that interruption works. If someone seeks attention through negativity and you react emotionally, you're confirming that it gets results. Shifting this dynamic requires a different kind of discipline. Instead of reacting to everything, you become selective with your attention. You start noticing what behaviors align with your standards, even in small ways, and you respond to those. It might be someone listening without interrupting, speaking respectfully, or showing effort where they didn't before. When you acknowledge that behavior through attention, engagement, or even a subtle shift in tone, you reinforce it. You're signaling that this is what earns your time and energy. Ignoring unwanted behavior doesn't mean you're unaware of it. It means you're choosing not to fuel it. There's a difference between addressing something once with clarity and repeatedly reacting to it. After the boundary is clear, continued emotional reactions only keep the behavior alive. When there's no reaction, no engagement, no visible reward, the behavior starts to lose its purpose. It becomes ineffective. Over time, people either adjust or move on to a different pattern. This approach requires patience because the change is not immediate. In fact, sometimes behavior intensifies at first. When someone is used to getting a reaction and suddenly doesn't, they may push harder. They may repeat the action more frequently, escalate it, or try different angles to get your attention back. This is where most people give in. They interpret the escalation as a sign that ignoring isn't working, and they react again. But consistency is what makes the shift happen. When the behavior repeatedly fails to produce a result, it eventually fades. Your consistency also builds predictability in a positive way. People begin to understand what earns your engagement and what doesn't. They don't need constant reminders or corrections because your responses create a clear pattern. You're not controlling them directly, you're influencing the environment they operate in. And in that environment, certain behaviors thrive while others disappear. Tone and delivery matter here as well. When you reward behavior, it doesn't have to be exaggerated. It can be subtle, a slightly warmer tone, more engagement, a bit more time given to the conversation. Overdoing it can make it feel forced or manipulative. The key is authenticity. You're not pretending to like something, you're genuinely reinforcing what aligns with your standards. That authenticity is what makes the reinforcement feel real. Ignoring, on the other hand, must be clean. No side comments, no visible frustration, no passive aggressive signals. Even negative body language can act as a form of attention. A sigh, an eye roll, a dismissive glance, these are still reactions. True ignoring means removing the response entirely.